Good, good morning and good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today's session on building communication skills. And it is really my pleasure to introduce Norbert Sluzewski. Uh, Norbert and I have known each other now almost 23 years. I used to work for Norbert in New York in say 23 years ago, Norbert was the founder and president of DataBox Technology, a boutique technology consulting firm. And I got my footing in consulting through Norbert. And over the years, our relationship has continued to develop. He is a friend, a mentor, and a guide. And I'm very, very honored to have him with us today. And I want to thank everyone who has joined. So without further ado, Norbert, very welcome. I'm going to go on mute and have you present to us the thoughts that you have for us today. So we are all eager to learn. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. I do appreciate it. Ashish never gives himself enough credit, but if our relationship has kind of flourished over the course of those 23 years, it's because it's been bilateral. I learned from Ashish, Ashish learns from me, perhaps, and that's how communications starts, persists, and continues. So with that, what we started doing, Ashish's idea, which very helpful, very willing and interested in supporting and participating in, was to share some of our collective knowledge, wisdom, experience in various aspects of business behavior. And today we're going to talk about communications. Communications is for many, a lost art. Sometimes considered to be too trivial to spend any amount of time on. Yet it is an art. And people do tend to communicate with flaws, therefore they don't get their message across. They tend to then become kind of complacent, sometimes a little belligerent. Why is it I'm telling you something and you're not getting it? It must be your fault. And usually it's in the source side of the communication where communication fails, not necessarily on the receiving side. So what we thought of doing today is just spending a little time focusing on a couple of things that I personally learned over time that might put out there some ideas that you may find valuable to emulate. Maybe there's something that you've been practicing and could hone in a little bit more on. But maybe it'll also answer some questions if in your personal life, business, any type of situation which requires communication, which is pretty much everything that humans do. What you might find today are some observations that might help you in making that communication a little bit more effective. So I think I have maybe 6 or 7 thoughts that I'll be sharing maybe over the next 20, 30 minutes. And please, by all means, inject something at any point in time. This is not a diatribe. It's not a monologue. It's hopefully a conversation. If you're muted right now, just be aware. If you want to ask a question, just pop in there and mute yourself, and we'll pause and we'll address. Okay. So first slide. Okay. We'll just kind of go through again, as I said, about 6 or 7 main thoughts that I would want to share with you, and I'll start with this one. And that is around the concept of understanding who you're communicating with, because that is not a trivial concept. Face-to-face communications, PowerPoint presentations, communications via phone, all require a certain understanding of the counterparty with whom you're having your respective discussion. And if you do not completely understand the motivation, and we're going to start injecting a couple of terms here called status quo behavior or status quo predisposition, you may find yourself preaching in the direction that the person is not prepared to listen to you in. And I make a distinction here between a communication that tends to lead toward we'll call it project, but it's any new activity, something new, something that breaks the current norm. Call it an acquisition, and comparing and contrasting that to a existing project, trying to expand on something that already exists. And to many, these are kind of similar. I'm speaking to my boss about a new project that I want to start, or if I'm speaking to that same individual about embellishing an existing capability with some feature add-ons, You might think that that's the same conversation, and you couldn't be farther from the truth. They're actually very, very different types of communications. An acquisition communication versus an expansion communication are two almost diametrically opposed styles of conveying your message. And what do I mean by that? They kind of all fall back on the realization that people are gravity-centric, okay? They like status quo. They always like to fall back on something that already exists. And changing that something that already exists is an effort that most humans, are a little bit reluctant to undertake. Unless you're Elon Musk, who thrives on change, most of the people that we're communicating with kind of fall into this status quo bias type of, psychology behavioral pattern, meaning that to nudge them to change is a very different effort than to nudge them to improve on something that's already working and make some, small little incremental changes to. And until you understand the predisposition of the person that you're addressing, what their kind of attitude is towards status quo. Are you speaking to an Elon Musk? Or are you speaking to a heavily administrative focused individual in your enterprise, who just likes the process that's already in place and, don't break something that's working, then you're probably not targeting your message in the most effective way. And just compare and contrast, right? On one side of the equation, you're trying to defeat something that already exists, right? You're kind of going into a battle, right? You have to have language and verbiage that will support a go-to-battle type of a communication. On the other side, a reinforcement type of communication is one that, first of all, has to establish the fact that what exists works, and also identify those minor changes that might improve on the current status quo. And again, compare, just visualize the conversation that you're having with someone who you're approaching to uproot completely something that exists. Establish in your enterprise a brand new communications or collaboration platform. Throw out the old, bring in something new. That's completely disruptive. The conversation to convey that type of a message and try to convince someone to back you on that is a very different message than saying that our collaboration platform is really phenomenal, but there's a little bit of extra tweaking here that we haven't considered, and can we talk a little bit about how we can make those improvements happen, right? One is a battle, one is a management and maintenance type of a conversation, right? When you're messaging a kind of a go-to-battle type of message, you have to absolutely, get the message across about why is it that you need to change. Why now? Why can't this wait until whenever, right? Whereas if you're just doing a reinforcement type of communication, then, first of all, you have to establish why should we stay where we are and just make small incremental changes to it, and why do we actually have to evolve? And as you kind of structure that type of a communication, you're just basically realizing the fact that there's a different psychology in play. Again, and Elon Musk will very much oppose you when all you want to do is reinforce what he already has, right? Your administrative-centric type of a supervisor in your enterprise is going to be asking a lot of questions and putting a lot of roadblocks in front of you when you're going to try to convince them that everything that we have is wrong and we need to go into a completely different left field type direction. So be aware of that. Prepare yourself for either a battle or for a smooth type of transition conversation. Pick your words correctly. The art of the language comes into play here. If you start using words that are subtle, delicate, and kind of fluffy, and you're really trying to uproot an existing paradigm, you're going to get that person to yawn. And conversely, right, if you're trying to go to battle and use strong, aggressive words with a reinforcement message, people are going to say, well, do you really want to just reinforce? Maybe you're saying something different. I don't trust you. Right? So be aware of that. Be aware that when you're sending out a communication in whatever form it happens to take, it's going to be addressing the status quo bias of your counterparty, and you need to really understand that person's bias strength to understand where your successes potentially lie. Okay, so that was just kind of one of the things that I wanted to share with you, and I'm sure if you think about this in your both professional life, personal life, you're probably able to conjure up one or two examples of where maybe you haven't quite used the right strategy for this type of action that you're seeking from your counterparty. Okay. I'll give you an example here, just one that comes to mind. If you're going to your boss and you're asking for a raise, okay, it's a very different conversation, or advancement, doesn't have to be monetary, but an advancement. And if you're applying for a brand new job, okay, which one fits into which, right? In the first case, you're asking for some sort of an incremental change to your current set of responsibilities. That's basically reinforcing the fact that you're great at what you do. You can do more. Give me the opportunity to do that, right? If you're applying for a new job, then you're on a war, right? You're in war and competing with everybody else who's applying for that job. And your language should not be one of kind of fluff and gentle and such. You have to get the message across of who you are, why you're the best person for the job, why now should they be hiring you. Again, a very, very different conversation. So I'll just throw that out at you as an example of understanding the company that you're applying to or working with. The person that you're communicating this to, will react differently depending on the strength of the message, a reinforcing message or a defeat type of message that you put in front of them. Okay. So that was kind of my first concept. I'll pause for a second just in case any questions. Anybody want to embellish that or counter for that matter, if they have some different observations?
No, but I have a question. Does it apply to both individual communication and the group communication, where you have a larger group, the 100+
okay.
audience?
A little hard to hear you. I'm sorry. Say again, please, a little slowly.
Does this status quo bias just apply to individual communication or even a group communication?
Oh, absolutely.
Where your audience.
Yeah, yeah. Multiply that by from a person communicating to a team communicating. Usually a team might be represented by a person, who's asked to be the lead for that particular group. But yeah, the same concept applies. If you have a group working on something that's trying to get some, action moving forward, the same absolute concept applies.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Norbert, Joe Ploskin. Yeah. Excellent summary, when due to, and my comments here are just to expand on, I think what just is good. And I know in my experience, what I also bring into the, sort of your arrows is sort of the Myers-Briggs communication model. So I think what you said is absolutely true, but some people are interested in the detail, and some people want, you got to talk 15 minutes about whatever before you could start into the topic. And so there's another slice of this, understanding maybe how to communicate. How does that person receive information or want to receive information? And what you lay out is perfect in terms of the subjects. But I think there's two things here. One is what you put on is absolutely right. The other one is the simplistic thing is on most of this stuff is, what's in it for me, or if it's more risky, how much risk, and the only point I make is you bringing it back to an individual, or the other point that Ajaz was making it work group, it's like, so, it's like you've got to sort of figure out where you're at on that spectrum, because not everything is black and white. When you have these conversations around a topic, some of it may be project orientated, but for some people in the group, it may be a new thing or whatever. Other people say, it's just more of the same. So I'll stop there.
You mentioned the word risk, and by the way, risk tolerance and status quo bias are almost interchangeable. In the sense that, people who are strong in terms of their status quo predisposition are usually risk intolerant, right? And conversely, people who have a very low bar for status quo and are willing to change are also, very willing to take additional, maybe sometimes even, unhealthy risks. All right, so again, if you understand that part, you're understanding both the status quo and the risk at the same time. And again, the messaging then is appropriately structured to reflect that, right? And clearly you can see here on the right and the left side, risk is all on the left side, on the defeat side, right? much less risk, on the reinforce side.
Yeah. What I find also, and I apologize to the group, and these are just free association thoughts, but depending on the audience, some people may have been introduced to the topic, and so they're ahead of the learning curve about what it's about. And if it's the first time you're hearing it, you maybe want to run away from the topic. So where I see it is like in implementing quality programs where you do the top down. You got to get the executives online, then the next level. But if you and you get the guys like me that are down at the fourth level, these other guys are already moved down the curve on I forget what they call it. It's not the grief curve, but the one that goes up and down. So if I'm on the way up, understanding I'm really happy about this change, and I'm just the other guy is just learning about it. So that goes back to when you're in a group, it's how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Again, the topic that we're broaching today, and I use the word again, broaching, is all that we're doing. Whole art of communication, we could probably spend a month every day for 6 hours,
Sure.
and we still wouldn't exhaust it. So we can come up with a whole bunch of other additional topics that we can probably bring into some subsequent sessions like this. And by the way, we will have other sessions, kind of going through a little methodology that Ashish came up with, and we're going to go through point by point and set up sessions like this for those other kind of subtopics. And we're both focusing on the technology development kind of career and the business development side of the house on a career, from a career perspective. So we're going to exhaust those, and we'll probably then circle back and start saying, well, we missed this. Let's do another session on that. So always helpful to receive comments and input like this. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk a little bit about this concept of in any sort of communication, even today's session. You're going to pause at the end of this session, go have a cup of coffee, spend some time with the family. Tomorrow you'll recollect, we had the session yesterday. And you're going to probably remember about 10%. And that's just, it's not because you're dumb or smart. It's not because, I did a good job or a bad job. It's just nature of, human thought acquisition and recollection that we tend to approximately retain about 10% of what we hear on average, right? There's some geniuses that'll remember what I said word by word. Others won't remember that darn thing. On average, okay, 10%. So what is the meaning of this? I mean, the meaning of is that if you're sharing some sort of a message, whether it's through a PowerPoint presentation, through a communication session such as this one, where in what you're sharing, do you want to place the focus on things that you absolutely want your audience to remember? You know that the other 90% they won't, right? But where is it in your structure of content that you're sharing that you have placed those things that you want your audience to remember at the end, right? And that's not a trivial question to ask, and there are certain tricks that you can apply to make sure that you place the 10% of what you want them to remember in such a way where that 10% will be remembered, right? So there's a bunch of tricks that can be applied. We'll talk about one or two of them in just a moment. But from this page at least perspective, be cognizant of the fact that, and don't blame your audience for the fact that at the end they are not going to remember every single word that you said and every single message that you conveyed. Some they will remember better, some they will remember faintly. Which they will remember better is more up to you as a presenter than it is up to them. Okay, and here's one little trick that I've used in the past, and it actually works quite well. People react to shock. So let's say you're going through some message. Here's how it starts. Here's I'm developing my topic, and here's I'm putting some concluding statements to it to make sure that it's all well conveyed. Somewhere in the middle, where you have a really, really important message that you really, really want your audience to pay attention to, throw in a bomb. And what is a bomb? Bomb is something that will stick to them emotionally. A bomb might be, in this particular project, if we move this forward in the way that I'm proposing, then in all likelihood, everybody's likely to get one extra PTO day a month or a year. People are going to remember that. That's a bomb. Okay, they weren't expecting that. that wasn't part of the actual core message. That wasn't really the goals that we're trying to accomplish, but it's something that impacts me personally, something that I will definitely enjoy and attach emotional, I'll have an emotional attachment to. And what you just said that led up to that statement and the statement immediately thereafter will be the two statements that will create a much stronger cognitive attachment in that person's mind than the 3 messages before and the 4 messages after. So find those little things that you believe will appeal emotionally to your audience, as much personal as possibly can be. The more personal it is, the more attached it is to that individual, and the stronger the recollection will be. And every topic that you're presenting, affords different types of bombs to be thrown, so to speak, into the conversation. But put that bomb exactly where the most important message is. Don't overuse them. If you have an hour-long session and you have 12 bombs in that presentation, that does not help you much. Okay, it dilutes the value. But throw in 1 or 2. And again, throw them around the core messages, the core concepts, the ones that you want the audience to act on and perhaps gain concurrence with. And you'll find that this works tremendously well. It's a very powerful technique. Okay. Another very useful technique is the power of repetition. Right? So if you have a message and you've started in the first sentence and went through your other 10 or 15 sentences, full stop at the end and say, thank you very much, I appreciate your time and understanding, kind of bland. Okay, it's linear. It's probably devoid of any sort of punctuation in terms of, here's the most important, here's the most important, here's the most important. If, the bomb was won, a repetition of something that you said in the beginning, which was very important, and because it was in the beginning, it may not have gotten the right attention yet. Repeat that same thing somewhere midway or 3/4 through the presentation or through your communication. Right? We're asking for a budget that's going to exceed our current allocation. Okay. People kind of say, okay, I don't know what that means, so I'll continue to listen. You've done a little bit more presentation, you've done a little bit more communication, in the 2/3 of the duration of the presentation. This project will, require us to find funds, that are currently not allocated. You're basically repeating the same concept. People have heard it the first time, the second time they'll remember it better. And do it one more time at the end, when you're doing a summary. All right, here's the 5 main things that I want us all to remember or, take action on at the end. And one of them should be those things that you've been repeating first, second, and now the 3rd time. Use it judiciously, because if you repeat the same thing over and over again, you're going to put your audience to sleep pretty quickly, right? So that's obviously not the recipe. But if you use it judiciously, again, focusing on those things that are the most important, 10% of content that you want your audience to recollect, say it once, say it twice, say it 3 times, probably as far as you want to go. Okay. All right. Just pause a little bit and let's talk a little bit about storytelling. So stories trump figures every day, right? Unless you are a financial accountant and you're doing a balance sheet presentation, even then, if you go to a 10K presentation by the CFO on a public call, they go through numbers in about 3 seconds, and after that they go into storytelling. They weave the numbers into stories and tell the meaning of those numbers in a way that convinces the audience to, sorry, not convinces, but incentivizes the audience to understand it from a context of impact, from a context of what bearing does that have on the company's performance. So, figures are important. You put your diagrams out there as your backdrop, but every single figure should have some sort of a story weaved around it. People will remember stories. People will not remember figures. People will remember stories. They will not remember diagrams. Use your diagrams at the most high level of aggregation possible. Again, unless you're doing an engineering drawing and you're showing your boss how this port connects to this piece of cable, right? That's a different type of communication. But if we're talking about business, communications in life, and you want to pictorialize something, bring it up to as high a level of a block type of representation of the concepts that you're conveying, and don't go any deeper than you absolutely have to. Otherwise, you're basically losing valuable time, and you will probably have been forgotten at that level of detail. Whereas at the top level, there may be some bombs that you can attach to those key stories, right? So, use figures every day, use them twice on Sunday. It is a powerful technique. And there's a little quote that I've used in the past, and it kind of brings out the meanings. And we share data and facts through numbers and figures, but it's really the stories that express our experiences, the knowledge and the deeper meaning. And it's really what uniquely defines us from, or differentiates us from machines and ultimately AI. Right? So don't become the AI, don't become the machine, because then your job is outsourced, guaranteed.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, and I'll just share, and I don't know if it's applicable or you agree with it, but most people have to do PowerPoints these days. Nobody reads Word documents anymore. And I always tell the people, they put up the numbers and they put up the diagrams, and they don't put the so what. I'm saying the same thing you're saying, but there's the so what, not the the audience doesn't have to interpret the numbers or the diagram. You tell them what it's supposed to mean, which is a little bit different than I think what you're saying there, or maybe it is the same thing. You tell the story, but that I'll just share my experience on that.
Yeah. And we're going to develop this concept just a little bit more, and then one or two more thoughts after this. But just pause on this to take it in for a moment. These stories are the most powerful technique at your disposal. If you know the language, use it in a way that conveys messages, woven into stories as opposed to just linear facts and figures. A simple point, most people I think recognize this, is when we speak, particularly when we speak, we should really try to appeal to most other senses other than just audio, right? Create pictures in people's minds, create the sense of smell, create the sense of music, if you will. People, very articulate people, when they speak, they actually sing. I'm not one of them, unfortunately. I'm still practicing, but the best speakers out there are people that can literally create the crescendos and the diminuendos, and in their voice literally sings as they convey their stories. And that is super powerful. It's a technique that for some folks it's unnatural, and they really have to practice hard to get to a point of just having that story vibrate in the ears of their audience. To other people, it's just kind of a natural phenomenon. They're born with it. But everybody, if they wish to be effective communicators, it is a skill that has to be just become part of your every day. And it's so easy to practice because we're doing something right now in a virtual forum. But you know what? Again, you're going to end this. You're going to say pause, speak to your family, go visit some friends, perhaps. There's every single every single encounter like that presents an opportunity to tell a story. Practice it. I just bought, I don't have it here, do I? I don't. There's a beautiful story called The Little Prince. I'm not sure if anybody ever read it. It's by French author Sluzewski. I would encourage everybody to buy a copy. It's a one-night reading. It's about 40 pages, perhaps. You pick it up, and it sounds like a book for kids because it's written in the language of kids. It's about a little prince that lives on a planet. It's a beautiful story for kids. Yet woven into it are such powerfully deep stories about human life that this particular author was able to appeal to the reader's senses, to be able to absorb and take what otherwise seems like a simplistic, nothing really to be said. My kids, 5-6 year olds really enjoy the Little Prince flying through the sky type of a storyline. But read between the lines. The messaging there is very, very powerful. So it's an example of appealing to multiple senses and conveying stories around what otherwise could be a pretty bland topic. And I won't tell you what that core topic is in the book. Maybe you'll read it yourself. but it's a hard topic, and yet spoken in a way or described in such a way which really appeals to so many different senses. So wanted to share that with you. Couple sins that people make when they communicate. So let's see if those can be avoided. We already talked a little bit about too much information, right? Blocking things up to those most salient and essential concepts is absolutely key. You know, people will remember the concept. They will not remember everything that you've unwrapped inside that concept, right? So that typically number one. The next one goes to empathy, and we'll talk about empathy in just a moment, but realizing that you're not speaking to just speak and utter words, you're speaking to appeal to your counterparty, right? In order to appeal to them, you have to understand them. So you have to, you know, communicate from their point of view. So when you say, I'm going to do for you, really the better thing is you're going to receive something from me, okay? Two different points of view. I'm going to give you is from my point of view. Okay, I will sell you something. You're going to receive something from me. You will have bought something from me. Is a very different tangible. Think about that. It requires thought when you're structuring your messages and your communications to essentially rephrase everything in the context of how am I going to receive this on the side of the receiver. I'll pause on that because there's more to come on a subsequent thought, okay? And then, you know, there's always the why. You know, why should you be listening to me? And people just tend not to create a lot of differentiation. You know, they say, well, you know, my matchbox has 10 matches in it. Great, you know, this other matchbox has 10 matches in it too, so what? But mine has 10 and they're blue. Okay, you know, you start going into this nonsensical type of attempt to differentiate without any rhyme or reason. You need to obviously appeal to all the different senses that the counterparty is susceptible to and create differentiation along those senses. If you're just me too, you're really just wasting your breath and your other party's time because there's nothing they will have learned from your communication, and you will in all likelihood not be successful. So create differentiation between what you're offering, how you're presenting your value, compared to whomever else that might be your either competitor or another party from whom that source, that individual draws you know, inference or information from. So these are the three that are probably the most common. You know, blah, 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 way too much. It's all about me, okay? You know, here's how good I am. And, you know, now I'm so good, but I'm really not any better than anybody else. So, you know, if you get those 3 points, you know, across, then you've done absolutely nothing. Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about something that addresses that too much information aspect. And if you're not familiar with PechaKucha, I draw your attention to it. Go to a site called pechakucha.com. I'll tell you in just a second what it's all about. But it's a technique that was originally developed in Japan. And it basically forces you to take whatever message you've set in your mind to convey and force you to do it in 20 slides with no more than 20 seconds per slide. Okay. It forces you, here's the website action. It forces you to think about what's important. It forces you to be very jurisprudent in terms of word selection. You know, if there's one word that means 10 things, okay, or that says 10 things in one word, then why use 10 words if you can just say it in one word, okay? If you only have 20 slides and you only have 20 seconds to describe each slide, and I'm simplifying the concept to its max right now, but there's a lot more to it that I would encourage you to go to this website and learn a little bit more about. But if you only have 20 seconds to explain everything that's on that slide, your slides are going to be full of meaning, full of content that resonates and has reason to be there, and it will necessarily not have fluff and too much syntax and too many words to begin with. It'll just be the essence of the message, because at 20 seconds, your bell rings, quote unquote, in your head, saying, I need to move to the next. It's a technique that's used widely right now in many circles, not just our line of business, but also in real estate, for example. It's used in manufacturing. It's used in healthcare. So just take a peek. You can sign up for some free courses. You can participate in some free webinars. It is definitely guaranteed worth your time to spend a teensy bit of it learning the technique, and you'll find it's very easy to adopt in your own personal communication style. And let me talk also, I think we're getting close to closure, about empathy, right? So again, this all kind of comes together on a lot of previous points made. So if you don't understand your counterparty, if you don't understand what drives their emotions and what they will react to, then you're just spewing out words that are probably, wooden, if not stone, as opposed to, full of context and smell and articulated and so on and so forth. So empathy is a key skill that unfortunately most people don't have. And they tend to be more egocentric, meaning that, about me, I need to conquer this. I need to get this message out. I need to make sure that this person buys this from me. And at the end, here's another quote that I've been using, which kind of speaks a little bit to what empathy can do, or what, for that matter, lack of empathy can do. People tend to be looked upon as opportunists, when they lack empathy. It comes across so loud and clear that it's all about you and not about me, whom you're addressing. And it's about words, it's about the messages, and it's about ultimately actions that you take that follow your messages. So empathy is to understand your counterparty and how they will react to what you're conveying to them before you actually say it. And I think this will, I think this is my last set of thoughts. So there's a purpose behind communicating. You ultimately need to, generate some action, right? You don't communicate just to, spew a whole bunch of words that don't have any consequences. You're typically saying something, you're communicating something because you're looking to create some sort of a reaction to it, right? Whether it's a hire me, whether it's a, go along with me on this project path. Thank you, for marrying me. A proposal is a communication. You want to create action in the end, right? So you want to state, what you will do, but more importantly, you really want to emphasize, the outcome that the thing that you will do will create, right? So just because you say you're going to do something, okay, and you can be very specific about what it is that you will end up doing. I will, find monies in our budget to, make this project move forward, right? But if you actually do that, there will be an impact. The impact will be this project will create yada, 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 whether it's a marketing opportunity, branding opportunity, new capabilities and technology and whatnot. That's where the emphasis should be. It's not the fact that I will find monies in the budget to create this project. It's that this project will create the outcomes that project is geared to create. And I'll throw some examples here to maybe bring this a little bit more to life. So if you're thinking, if in your mind you want to communicate that I'm going to, provision everybody with these 5G cell phones and all the frontline staff are going to receive them, and that's the message that you're conveying to your customer, well, that's all great and dandy, and that's all that they're going to hear, right? Fine, and we're going to get all these phones, they're probably at a decent price, your service is immaculate, love it, right? But that's not really the main message. The main message is that action will have created an impact. And that impact is that you will have created, a process, work site improvement by a factor of 5x. That is the end goal, right? It's not the provisioning of the 5, 10, 15, 50 cell phones. It's the impact that provisioning will have. And when you communicate, spend a little time telling the customer, your client, whomever, that you're going to be provisioning what you're going to be provisioning. But 95% of the remaining part of the communication should focus on the impact that will create. There's another example in a maybe a hospital case, right? We're going to make sure that every doctor is provisioned with a HEPA mask within 4 hours of you ordering it from us. But that's all great and dandy. But really, what that does, it allows us to maintain capacity in our hospital, right? And our doctors will always have what they need at their disposal in order to service the patients, right? That's really the important part, not the fact of provisioning the masks. And then maybe just one more in retail. So, if we go and definitely, our contract says we're going to provide cleaning services. Snow will be removed as soon as it accumulates. Hope you're happy with it, right? But that's not really what you're wanting to communicate. You want to communicate that retail establishment will be open, whenever they want to be open, and snow will never be an issue, and you will be taking care of that for them, right? And that's the emphasis again. Okay, and it's an important differentiation because it is very easy for us to focus on us. I am going to do this, but it's not until we invoke empathy and we put ourselves in the frame and mind of the party that we're addressing, what value what I'm doing has to them, you have to address and you have to articulate and you have to appeal to that. And these are just 3 very simple examples of think this, fine, say it once, fine, but then spend the balance of the time making sure that they understand that you're understanding their actual need.
Wow, truly awesome. Truly awesome. I think, go ahead, Norbert, you have one more slide.
Yeah, this is just to close, to be consistent with what I said, use repetition judiciously. So I'm going to repeat a couple of things here. This is what we talked about. So we talked a little bit about status quo disposition and predisposition to focus on status quo. Make sure that you understand how ingrained in status quo is the person that you're speaking to. Right, their risk tolerance is a derivative of that, as we talked. Find, where in your communication is the most important message, making sure that one is attached to some sort of a kaboom. Make it resonate, make it explode in the middle of that presentation, right there where you want the focus to be and where recollection will be the strongest, right? Master empathy, it's a human skill. It's not a professional skill, it's a human skill. How you choose to do that is kind of beyond the scope of our conversation today. But if you don't show empathy, you will be deficient in communication. One goes in hand with the other. Do repetition. Take a look at the Pechakucha 2020 concepts. And again, focus on the impact, not the message itself. All right. So I think that's all that I wanted to convey today. We've exhausted all but the last remaining few minutes of the hour. I think Ashish made a whole hour's worth of reservations. So anybody would like to jump in and throw some of their own insights, maybe some different spins on this, by all means, please. Anybody else?
Norbert, I could just like to share an incident with you. It's on story Trump figures. So I work for IBM for Twitter, who is a client. So Ashish is also part of that account. So last week we had our R2R global team meet where we had stakeholders across APAC, EMEA, and US. So I was presenting a deck on different kinds of general entries we have processed, number of reconciliation, number of accruals. It was all about numbers with the charts thrown around. So suddenly our chief accounting officer stopped. He said that, I don't want to see numbers. I want to see a story around it. So then suddenly I realized that, it's a skill that I'm lacking and, that I need to develop. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. And that's right. You're going to find those types of directions more and more so as I'm not sure how to actually articulate the dynamic that's occurring in today's marketplace, but it is definitely one toward user experience, employee experience, and with the word experience comes, empathy. Right? So much focus currently being placed on it that a lot of companies are literally transforming the way that they communicate internally, externally, how they develop products and solutions to always appeal, to this experience part of the equation. So I'm not surprised to hear what you just shared with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks. Anybody else? All right, Ashish, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Norbert. I think we are all very, very fortunate to have you and have you pour into us such wisdom and guidance that it can, allow us to go to the next level of maturity in our lives and working areas. So I appreciate it. And for the audience, I would like to say that we are planning to do a set of this kind of workshops. So I think we are all very fortunate to get audience with Norbert like this. And I will be in touch with most of you via email once we decide the date, so that you can invite others also. We have a series of workshops planned to really enable. Our desire is, and I'm saying this on Norbert's behalf and my behalf, desire is to really, if I can just use the word, be a blessing or be an enabler to someone else, right? So that if you can take something away from this little teaching session today that will empower you, help you think differently, take your skills to the next level, I think then we have achieved our goal, right? So this is really, that's really what's in our heart and mind behind this. So I really appreciate it. Norbert, I personally learned, I had never heard of Pachacucha before. I'm going to check it out. Personally for me, the takeaway has been position the 10% where it will be best remembered and create that kaboom. I really like that. Right? I want to emphasize impact. I'm really working a lot on that. So it's not about talking about the problem, but really the opportunity on the other end. And that has enabled me to gain more greater mind share of my clients that I work with, or even help me in my own work areas. So I do agree with you. Thank you again. Before we close, does anyone else have anything to say, or what are your one or two takeaways? Anyone?
Yes, Ashish, I like the presentation. It was really useful. My takeaway is mastering empathy. So I think that's going to be my skill that I need to add on. It's really useful. Yeah.
Thanks, Julie.
I think I agree with everyone's comments. I think it was a really nice session. It was a well use of my time on a Saturday. So thank you, Norbert. Thank you, Ashish, for doing this.
Yep. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Well, it's certainly been my pleasure. I appreciate kind comments, and stay with us. Like I said, we'll have many more of these to come, and Ashish will be communicating with everybody accordingly.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashish.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.